Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're looking at The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution by Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist, an educator, and a science popularizer. The Greatest Show on Earth was first published in 2009 and was the 10th of his 17 books so far, most notably The Selfish Gene and The Extended Phenotype. He's the person who invented the word meme. Richard Dawkins is quite possibly my favorite author, and this is one of my most favorite books by him. By the way, I'll link in the description to some of the other books I reviewed by him. Now, yes, I did say I wasn't going to do another Richard Dawkins book until his new work, The Genetic Book of the Dead, comes out later this month, but I really wanted to read this book again, and I want to share good books, and this is a very good book. The reason Richard Dawkins wrote this book is because he's written a lot on evolution and how amazing and wondrous it is, but some people were telling him that he hasn't provided sufficient evidence to support the existence of evolution. Normally, teachers don't need to spend much time trying to validate their field, but Dawkins has gotten pretty good at anticipating his critics and addressing them in his books. He sometimes has to go into very scrupulous, pedantic specificity because his critics have been known to take his words out of context to try to argue against the things that he's said. So that's something he's had to get used to doing in his writing, and it's definitely good for ensuring that his points are being properly received by readers. Some readers might find this a little redundant, but it doesn't bother me. So, this book was written with a slightly different motivation than his usual work. It does contain all the fascinating science and passion that we expect from Dawkins, but this one is geared a little more toward the studies that people have conducted, which provide fascinating and irrefutable demonstrations of evolution happening in observable time, as well as addressing arguments that certain groups will try to use to deny evolution. One argument that has been used against evolution for a long time is that we can't actually observe it happening. All we can do is analyze its effects, but that just isn't true. Some of my favorite and most memorable parts of this book were some of the studies that Dawkins discusses, like Richard Lenski's E. coli experiment, which demonstrated how combinations of chance mutations can have monumental effects that can confer game-changing adaptive advantages on the subjects, and John Endler's Guppy experiment demonstrating evolutionary arms races and showing how environment shapes organisms and how predators and prey can exert selection pressures on one another, which result in noticeable and predictable phenotypic variation happening in observable time. Beautiful stuff in this book. If you're a biology nerd, these are some of the parts that are really going to move you. But there are just so many incredible examples in this book. It will broaden your worldview. He also gives a number of examples of what he calls bad design, which are anatomical features that make no sense from a creation standpoint, but make complete sense from an evolutionary standpoint. My favorite examples are the recurrent laryngeal nerve, which runs from the vagus nerve to the larynx, but is tangled under the aortic arch because it's an inherited feature that first appeared in fish. And in the fish body, this makes perfect sense. There's a similar example with the vas deferens, which has to loop up around a ureter of the kidney. These examples challenge the idea that the human was created rather than evolved. And human, or really any animal, the recurrent laryngeal nerve is especially preposterous in the long neck of the giraffe. When I read Richard Dawkins, I see him as almost like a laboratory version of Steve Irwin, or maybe I should say a British Steve Irwin. And this book doesn't stop with animals. Like Darwin, Dawkins describes some pretty incredible coevolution between insects and flowers. He also provides detailed explanations on natural phenomena that support this kind of work, like continental drift and seafloor spreading, radioactive decay, and how we use that for various dating techniques, dendrochronology, which is using the overlapping growth rings of trees in forest systems to go back thousands of years. And speaking of trees, just the competition that is taking place all over nature. If you've ever read Jerry Coyne's Why Evolution is True, this book is almost like a bigger version of that book, though Why Evolution is True is an absolute must-read in itself. The Greatest Show on Earth is very good for clearing up some misconceptions about evolution, and there are a lot of them. Evolution has always been a subject that is easy to misunderstand, and I think that could be part of the reason why there are still some people who haven't accepted it. But it's pretty easy to understand if you just study it a little bit, and Dawkins is the master at teaching evolution. Nobody does it quite as well as him, not that I've read anyway, and there are a lot of writers who do it very well. But Dawkins has made it his business to help people understand evolution, and the more you understand evolution, the more difficult it becomes to dismiss or ignore it. As Charles Darwin said, there is grandeur in this view of life. Once you really process how any two living things on Earth share a common ancestor, it tends to give a person a humble appreciation for just being alive, and for me, I feel especially grateful for having been born human. The Greatest Show on Earth could be a good choice as your first book on evolution or your 100th. There are really no difficult concepts in this book that Dawkins doesn't explain, and the book is made to be easy to understand. In fact, it's designed to be difficult to misunderstand. It also has a lot of pictures, charts, and graphs, as well as 4 chunks of color photos spaced throughout the book. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. This book falls into the category of everyone should read this. So much of the resistance to the ideas we find in a book like this just disappear when we really understand the concepts, unless you have some personal reasons to deny science. I said earlier that evolution can be easy to misunderstand. Sadly, that's partly because incorrect ideas got passed around in order to try to turn people away from evolution. I've seen some of the things people say in comment sections to try to attack evolution. I've seen material that was designed not with the goal of understanding nature, but of protecting ideology. I've also seen Dawkins getting hate for educating people. If you want to use the comment section of this video to hate on Dawkins, I ask that you spend a little extra time to craft a thoughtful and insightful point and not just rudely attack someone. Regardless of who you are or what groups you might belong to, definitely check out The Greatest Show on Earth by Richard Dawkins.